Hey, this is Jerry from Bliz Studio, and welcome back. In our last tutorial, we put together some particle effects for the background and also for the controller, so when the ball hits the controller. So what's coming up in this one? I'm gonna add a little bit of rotation to the controller, as opposed to just moving flat. So when it gets to the edge of the screen, I'm gonna have it rotate up. Hey, and if you like these videos, please share. And if you're ready to get started, let's go. And we're back in Unity. So here we're gonna take the controller, and currently it just moves left and right. And what I want to do is I want to have that rotate the controller so that as it gets to the right side of the screen, it moves up. As it gets to the left side of the screen, it also rotates the other direction, okay? So I'm going to go to my controller. So currently we have a move controller set up. And here we are getting our mouse X and we're setting the local transform of the controller using that data. So I'm also going to then create a new Playmaker FSM that's going to do the same thing, but it's going to do the rotation. Now, you're asking, why do I do this separate? That's my personal preference on setting those two things up completely differently. One is handling just the movement, one is handling rotation, and I don't have to worry about kind of like intermixing any of those because I might want to handle one just a little bit differently. So let's go ahead and set up a new Playmaker FSM. I'm going to do that here on the move controller. I have the controller game object selected, and here where it says move controller in this little drop down, I'm going to add a new FSM. Okay, so I have this set up. I'm going to go ahead and just call this rotate controller. And then over here in the Playmaker in the inspector, I'm also going to change FSM to rotate controller. And I do that way I can just at a glance, if you have a bunch of FSMs on there, instead of saying just FSM, 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 it tells me exactly which one that is. So if I need to turn one on or off, I can do that easily and find that. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do the same type thing that we did with the move controller, and that was get mouse X. So we're gonna get mouse X. So I'm gonna bring that down. So here we've got mouse X, and we need to store that result. So I'm going to go ahead and store that in a new variable, and I'm going to call this mouse. Let's just call it rotate, and click create. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm taking whatever the position is of the cursor, and then I'm storing that in a variable called rotate. All right, so let's just see what this looks like here real quick. And I have the debug area turned on so we can see what the position of the cursor is as I'm moving. So we see that this number is changing. Okay, so that's the number that I'm storing in my variable. So if we go over here, we click on variable, you can see the value here. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to take that number and then I'm going to set the rotation of my controller. Okay, so let's go and set a rotation. Drag that down, and what we're going to do is we need to determine, okay, what angle do we want to rotate this thing. So I don't want to rotate it on the x-axis because that's going to rotate it moving towards us. If I rotate it on the y-axis, it's going to flip it up and down like that. What we want to do is rotate it on the z-axis, so it's going to rotate around the z. Okay, so here we have Z angle in our set rotation, and we used that variable, or we created that variable called rotate. I'm going to use rotate to then rotate that game object around the Z angle. Okay, and I also want to make sure I do this every frame. Okay, so whatever that number is, we're going to use that number to rotate our game object. So let's give this a try real quick. So as I move the controller, you can see that it's rotating, but the rotation is very, very slight, so you can see it right here. Because my controller is only moving so far on the screen. So what I need to do is if I want to make that a greater number, I need to multiply it. Okay, so we have this variable that we're using as a float. And if I multiply it by another number, I can increase the number that we're going to use. So I'm going to go ahead and do a float multiply, and what I'm going to do is go back to my state, and I want that to be in between the get mouse X and the set rotation, because here's kind of the logic of what we're trying to do. We're getting the number of our mouse, so what the X position is, We're gonna multiply it by a number, and it's gonna save it up into that same rotate variable. And then we're going to set the rotation of our controller based off that new number, okay? So here we're getting the mouse X, we're storing that as rotate. I'm multiplying the float variable, and it's saying, hey, what do you want to multiply it by? So let's just say 10. And I also want to make sure I'm doing this every frame. Okay, so here we're getting mouse X, multiply float, and then we're setting rotation. So let's give that a try real quick. Boom, boom. And now it feels like it's just a little too drastic right on the edge. So what I'm going to do is to go ahead and cut that by half and maybe just multiply by 5. So it's taking whatever that mouse X is, multiplying it by 5, and then setting the rotation. Boom. Yeah, that feels a lot more natural to me, I think. Boom, 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 boom.
Game over.
Cool. So we're having fun with it. So in this video, we put together a little bit of rotation on the controller. So it just makes it a little more dynamic, which is kind of fun. So what's coming up in the next video? We're actually going to address touch controls. So it's kind of a touchy subject. And again, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and that little bell icon down there so you know when the next video is available. And again, please share to help grow the channel. Till next time, peace.